Sargasthiti pralaya hetumachintya shaktim. Sargasthiti pralaya hetumachintya shaktim. Vishveshwaram vidita vishwamanantamurtim. Vishveshwaram vidita vishwamanantamurtim. Nirmukta bandhanamapara sukhamburashim. Nirmukta bandhanamapara sukhamburashim. Shri Vallabham Vimalabodhaghanam namami. Shri Vallabham Vimalabodhaghanam namami. Yasya prasadat ahameva Vishnu. Yasya prasadat ahameva Vishnu. Mayyeva sarvam parikalpitam cha. Mayyeva sarvam parikalpitam cha. Itham vijanami sadatmarupam. Itham vijanami sadatmarupam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. So, Vakya Vritti, which means analysis of a sentence. Which sentence? Tvam asi, that thou art. Where does this come from? It comes from the Chandogya Upanishad, where Shvetaketu's father tells him this 9 times and explains it to him. You are that. Why should we be interested? Well, because Vedanta tells us the way to overcome suffering and to attain fulfillment, which is after all what we are interested in. All that we do in life is trying to overcome suffering and to attain fulfillment, lasting peace, happiness, security. The way to do that is to realize who you are. That's the big claim. How do you realize who you are? You already are that. We just don't know it, we don't realize it. So the way is to know it, to realize it. And that is by knowledge. And the knowledge is transmitted by teaching. By this teaching through this language, this statement, you are that. But to understand that statement, we need to understand the meanings of the words in that statement, the meanings of the words in that sentence. You have to understand the sentence, the meaning of the sentence. In fact, extracting the meaning of the sentence, that's the exact meaning of Vakya Vritti. Vakya, sentence. Vritti, the procedure for extracting the meaning of the sentence. To extract the meaning of the sentence, we need to know the meanings of the words. Tat and tvam, that and thou, or you are that. So what is the meaning of you and what is the meaning of that? So yesterday we started this investigation. We have here the new improved Brahman. Much better, actually. So, when we started investigating, we found that the moment you say tvam, you, or and I say I, what do I refer to? I refer to this body and this mind, this thing. Yet when I investigate, why should I investigate? Because this is the whole effort is to find out the meaning of the word you. If I don't investigate, then I'm not trying to find out the meaning. I'm just taking it as it feels like. So when we try to find out the meaning, really, what am I begin to see, yes, I am. None of us are confused about the world. None of us think that we are the lake or the tree or nor do we think that we are the other person. I don't think I am you. You also don't think you are me. So we don't confuse ourselves with others. We don't confuse ourselves with the body, with the world. But when it comes to the body, we say, I am this body. When we start investigating, I notice that my sense of self remaining the same, the body changes so much. From birth to babyhood to childhood to youth to middle age to old age, the body changes so much. And yet I have an unbroken sense of selfhood in all of them. So I'm led to this intuition that I am the same person not changing in a changing body. I don't think I have changed, but the body has changed. So even when we say that, I've changed such a lot, or when we say you have changed such a lot, remember we are always referring to a change in the body from old age, or somebody has lost a lot of weight. Oh, you have changed so much. You lost a lot of weight is in the body. So, I, the unchanging self, it feels like that. By the way, these are arguments, all are provisional. Unchanging self in a changing body, Swami Vivekananda says these are perfectly childish arguments. We'll see why he says that, but provisionally. So I can't be the body. Why? Changing and unchanging cannot literally be the same thing. I'm not denying that there is a body, but I cannot literally be the body because I feel that I am the one. The baby's body and the grown-up person's body are very different. Then also, the body is an object of my experience. Yeah? I see the body. Just like I see this pen, I also see this body. Just like I can touch it, I can also touch this body. It's an object to all my senses. So that which is an object, a drishya, a seen entity, how can it be the same as the subject, I, the seer? I, who am, whatever I am. I'm trying to find out who am I. That is the investigation. Whatever I am always the experiencer. I'm not an experienced thing. Just as I'm not the pen, I'm also not the clothes I'm wearing, then this body is also an object of all the senses. It's drishya. The seer and the seen must always be different. And therefore, I am different from the body because I am the seer, the experiencer of the body. In some sense, I must be different from the body. Then the other arguments were provided. For example, the body has attributes, tall or short, male or female or whatever. All these attributes, they must belong to something. And if they are experienced, the object to which they belong, it must be an object to which they belong, not to the subject. The subject as such, if it has attributes, if you experience it, then it must be objective. And if you cannot experience, suppose I have some attributes, but I cannot experience them. Why do you say that the subject does not have any attributes? Well, if I have attributes and I cannot experience them, why speak about it at all? These are very simple but powerful insights. That if something is experienced, it must be objective. Or if it's an attribute, attributes always belong to substances. So, yellow leaf. Leaf is the substance, yellow is the color. So, yellow color belongs to the leaf. Yellow is seen objectively, so what it belongs to must also be an object. Attributes are there in the body, so I cannot be the body. Body is a modification of matter. Panchabhuta vikara, like a pot, he says. So I cannot be a modification of matter. Very big philosophical issues are involved here. The whole hard problem of consciousness, because the materialist says you are a modification of matter. Matter somehow becomes living matter in living bodies, and living bodies evolved into sophisticated brains and nervous systems, and somehow, the multiple somehows involved. Somehow the sophisticated brain and nervous system has generated this awareness, consciousness, which you call yourself to be I. You are just the end product of a long process, material process. That's the mainstream materialist reductionist argument. And that doesn't hold water. That is the whole hard problem of consciousness, in fact. That show me how from the brain. You can show how the brain has evolved. You can show how living beings have evolved. But from the brain and nervous system, how does consciousness come? That jump, it's a jump. Nobody has been able to bridge that gap. And it seems unbridgeable. If you understand the problem clearly, it's a problem in principle. It's not just we will know more about it. One neuroscientist, philosopher, Patricia Churchill, and she said that let's just keep doing neuroscience and then we will get the answer. But philosophers like David Chalmers said, no, in principle you can't. Ed Witten, who is this cutting-edge physicist at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Princeton. Some newspaper called him the closest thing that we have to Einstein today. String theorist. So somebody just asked him, there is a little interview on YouTube. Somebody asked him, it was mostly about physics, but somebody just asked him, what about the problem of consciousness? Do you think we will solve the mystery of consciousness? And it's not his subject, but he made a very nice observation. He said, the more we keep studying the brain, the more we will know about the brain. But I think consciousness will remain a mystery. An interesting observation. It's not that neuroscience is useless. Of course, we will know much, much more, and that's wonderful. And we are knowing much more about the brain and the nervous system, and it will be helpful for us also. But will it explain consciousness at some point? He says, no, it won't. Consciousness cannot be reduced to matter. In fact, it goes further from a philosophical perspective. One Tibetan Lama, he put it very nicely. He said, if you want to explain consciousness from the perspective of matter, that consciousness is actually produced by the brain. Brain produces mind and consciousness. They don't distinguish between mind and consciousness. If you say that brain produces, matter produces mind and consciousness, you have to solve two huge problems. One problem is, you are conscious. And you are conscious of, we are conscious of matter. How do you know that matter actually exists by itself? This is the old problem of materialism, of idealism, subjective idealism. And nobody has solved it. I think it was somebody, Kant or somebody, who called it the standing scandal of philosophy. That there is a world outside your experience, which seems to be common sense, but philosophically, logically, you can't prove it. So that Lama says the first problem will be, matter produces consciousness, but how do you know that matter exists apart from consciousness? Because the only experience of matter anybody has or can have is in consciousness. I've told you this often. I've had this argument with Bill many times. Bill Conrad. So he has this old question. Somebody told me, Swami, don't worry, he's been asking the question long before you were born. So don't expect to solve it now. He's been asking this question for 60, 70 years now. He's 97 now, 97. His question was, no, this what you're saying, that the world exists in our mind, consciousness, whatever it is, and it's not true. Let me suggest an experiment to you. We are sitting here, let's just put a camera in this room, and we will all walk out of this room, camera will keep on recording, we will come back, and then we will see the pictures, and we will see there was an empty room. It continued to exist. The camera showed an empty room without any conscious person in there. So that means the room is not in our consciousness, without any consciousness. If you flush out all consciousness from the room, leave an unconscious room, it still continues to exist. Existence of the world doesn't depend on your or my thinking about it. The world exists, and then we come, and then we'll experience it. That's the common sense view. How do you respond to that? I said to him, Bill, in your awareness, in your consciousness, you designed this experiment. In your consciousness, you put a camera. It's in your awareness. There is a room, here is Swami, we have put a camera, we switch on the camera. In your consciousness, you invited all of us to go out of the room. You, I, all of us, we went out of the room. We stood outside the room for a while. In your awareness. In your awareness, we came back into the room. In your awareness, we put on the camera, the pictures in the camera. In your awareness, we saw an empty room. At which point did you step out of your awareness to check that there is an empty room without any awareness? And he has no answer to that. That's how deep it runs, this problem of trying to prove the existence of matter. Galen Strawson, who is a philosopher at the University of Texas, UT Austin, he wrote this piece in the New York Times, Hard Problem of Matter. He says, there's no hard problem of consciousness. We are conscious. Who is not conscious here? We are all conscious. And we are conscious of matter. Matter is what appears to consciousness. You don't have to prove the existence of consciousness. You see, what we have done is a roundabout way. We have assumed that consciousness is produced by matter, and then we can't understand how matter will produce consciousness, and so hard problem of consciousness. Rather, he says, the real problem is, what is matter? And physics, which investigates what is matter, he says, before our eyes, the whole matter and the conception of matter is vanishing. from atoms to subatomic particles to subnuclear particles to quarks to now superstrings. What is matter? Matter is not disappearing into mathematics now. Anyway, that's my different talk, it from bit from chit. So that is one side of the problem. The other side of the problem, suppose you assume matter exists by itself. Then how does matter produce mind? How does matter produce consciousness? That's the hard problem of consciousness. So two huge problems in philosophy you have to face if you say brain is producing consciousness. One problem is the problem of subjective idealism. The other problem is the hard problem of consciousness. Whereas, if you start with consciousness, I'm not saying it's easier, but it's more natural, more logical. One sadhu in Uttarakhand, he said, महात्मा जी जड़ से शुरू करोगे तो जड़ ही मिलेगा, चेतन से शुरू करो तो चेतन मिलेगा. If you start your investigation with matter, with insentient matter, your conclusion will be material. You will end up with a source which is material. If you start your investigation from consciousness, you will end up with consciousness as the ultimate reality. That's why this old problem in philosophy, mind or matter, what is important, what is fundamental, what is real? And they would always joke in the philosophy, it's an old joke in philosophy classes. What is matter? Never mind. What is mind? No matter. Anyway, so we investigated and the same problem came with mind. Mind is also something that is experienced. Mind is also something that is changing. Mind is also something that has attributes. And in the Vedantic scheme of things, mind is also material actually. Sukshmatan matra, it's made of subtle matter. And so we came to the understanding that I must be the awareness, the consciousness to which mind and body and world are appearing and disappearing. Then I must be the awareness itself. So now we have two meanings of the word you or I. Two meanings. One meaning is the matter is proving to be recalcitrant. It's resisting mind. So one meaning of the word I or you, when I say you are that, one meaning is this body, mind, you can call it the causal body also, and consciousness. Everybody understands we are conscious. So I'm consciousness, plus I have a causal body, subtle body, physical body. This is one meaning of the word you. Whose meaning is it? Everyone. When we say you, that's what we automatically understand. I, this one. What is this? Please give me detailed inventory. Well, there is a body, there is mind, and if you want to distinguish mind and consciousness, yes, I am conscious. I am conscious, I have a mind, and there is a body also. Altogether, I am this body-mind consciousness complex. This is one meaning of the word you. And this is called, I'm introducing two terms. This is called Vakyartha, or literal meaning, or direct meaning. Vachya. Vachya means literal. Vachya. And the other meaning I will introduce is Lakshya. Implied meaning, or indirect meaning. What is the indirect meaning? After analysis, after going through this procedure, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the causal body, I am not the causal body, I am not the subtle body, I am not the physical body, I am consciousness only. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. That is Lakshyartha. Artha means meaning or reference. Again, to repeat, I am introducing two terms. These meanings are known to you because that's what we did yesterday. Straight away when you use the word you, we immediately take it, anybody in the world would take it to mean I am this body, this mind and consciousness. Consciousness, body, mind complex, or consciousness plus causal body, plus subtle body, plus physical body, or even more, if you want to go further deeper, more analyze, even more fine-grained analysis, then consciousness plus the Anandamaya Kosha, plus the Vijnanamaya Kosha, plus the Manomaya Kosha, plus the Pranamaya Kosha, plus the Annamaya Kosha. Consciousness plus Pancha Kosha, I, that's who I am. That's the direct meaning. And when we investigate like we did yesterday, who am I? Then I say, I am consciousness. Those 5 koshas, or the 3 bodies, are there, but they are not me. They are like my instruments or my vehicle. As I navigate this world, I'm clear I'm not this world, but as I navigate this world, I need this vehicle, this instrument, this chariot, to use Upanishadic metaphor. But I am not this vehicle, I am this. This is called lakshyartha. Lakshyartha, implied meaning. Implied meaning of what? Implied meaning of the word tvam, you. So 2 meanings we have found, vacyartha and lakshyartha. Why we are doing all this? Why are at all we investigating? Because we want to understand the meaning of this tattvamasi, that thou art. And will become more clear as we go along. We'll see why this entire process was useful. Before I move along to the next word, tat, that, I will just touch upon the ananda aspect. We keep saying sat chit ananda, and mostly you see we have been talking about I am, and I am conscious or I am consciousness. Existence awareness we've been talking about. But why do you keep saying that this one is ananda or bliss? In what sense? We'll talk about that now a little bit before we go on. Go on to what? Go on to investigating tat. Then we will find the meaning of the whole thing. So I am jumping ahead to verses 24 and 25. It says, why am I the self? In what sense am I bliss or ananda? And I find these 2 rather cute arguments, rather elegant and interesting, because we don't think in this way. So I wanted to introduce these arguments for you. These arguments are trying to prove that I am bliss, not that I have something which gives me joy or happiness, but I myself, my real self, is the source of all happiness. How? 24 and 25. Putra vittadayo bhava, putra vittadayo bhava, yasya sheshataya priyaha, yasya sheshataya priyaha, drashta sarva priyatama, drashta sarva priyatama, soham ityavadharaya, soham ityavadharaya, para premaspadataya, para premaspadataya, manabhuvam aham sada, manabhuvam aham sada, bhuyasam iti yo drashta, bhuyasam iti yo drashta, soham ityavadharaya, soham ityavadharaya. Do ascertain the fact that you are one with the seer, the dearest of all, for whose sake persons and things such as children and wealth are dear, and with regard to which there is the earnest desire. May I be the object of supreme love, always be and never cease to exist. Okay. Now I'm going to prove that of all the things which give us happiness, I, myself, you, yourself, to yourself, you give yourself the maximum happiness. Nothing comes close. And not only that, we're going to prove that you are a constant, everlasting source of happiness for yourself. Other things can give you happiness for a while and go away. So 2 things. Things give us happiness. Some give more happiness, some give less happiness. But what gives us maximum happiness is the self itself, Atma. And things can give us happiness sometimes they may not give us happiness. But what gives us unfailingly, certainly gives us happiness all the time, it is the Atma. These 2 things have to be proved. What argument can you show? So this is an argument to show that. First, things which which give us happiness, we like them. Food which gives you pleasure, you like that. Places, like this place, you like it, it gives you happiness. Persons which give you happiness, you like them. And conversely, that which we do not like, that which does not give us happiness, we don't like it. Now, of all the things that give us happiness, we like that more which gives us more happiness. So, I give this example. A mother loves the child, and the child has toys. And the mother loves the toys of the child also. Now, whom does she love more, the child or the toys? You will say the child. In fact, the toys are loved because, not that she's interested in playing with the toys, it's because they belong to the child. They're related to the one she loves. So the one which is loved for the sake of another is loved less than that another. Let me repeat that. The toys are loved for the sake of the child, so the toys are loved less than the child. Who gives her more happiness? Remember, what gives me happiness, I love. So if the toys are loved less and the child is loved more, who is giving me more happiness? The child. So whatever is loved for the sake of another is loved less than the other, and whatever is loved less gives me less happiness. Whatever is loved more gives me more happiness. Now he's going to say that everything is loved for the sake of the self, for the Atman, and therefore everything is loved less than the Atman. That which is loved less gives me less happiness. That which is loved more gives me more happiness. Then everything gives me less happiness. All the things that we love give me less happiness. The love which I have for the Atman gives me most happiness, because it's the maximum love. Maximum love means maximum happiness. Everything is loved for the sake of the Atman. You see the loop there. Now you might say, no, that's not true. I love things for their own sake, not for myself. So that nice example is that there was this young man who had a high-paying job in a multinational corporation. He said, I love my job. So somebody asked him, oh, so you love your job, then will you do it for free? We will not get the salary. You have this choice. You get the money, you get a lot of money from the job. So there's the money and there's the job. Now if I give you a choice, do the job, no money, or take the money, no job, what will you dare to do? He said, no, I need the money. So I enjoy the job, but more important is the money. I love the money more than the job. Which gives me more happiness? Money gives me more happiness. But then, suppose you have the money, whatever money you are earning, you have the money, but you can't spend it. It just be yours. You can't get anything in return for it. No, I need to spend it. I need to buy things for my family, for my friends and all. So then you love the things which money can buy more than the money itself? Yes, of course. Money by itself has no meaning. So the things, I love them more. All right. You can have the things which you want to buy, but they will be given to people. But those people you can have the things, but you can't use them, you can't give them to anybody. No, that is also not possible. I have to use them, or I have to give them to my family, my friends and everybody. All right, that means you love your family and friends and more than the things. Well, let's go further. You will be able to give those things to all those people, but they won't be your family anymore. It's just some random family. No, they have to be my family. My wife and children, or husband, wife and children, father, mother, I have to give it to them. Then it must be yours. See, ultimately it comes back to I. It's connected to me. The family is loved. See, the job is loved for the sake of the money, which gives me more happiness. Money is loved for the sake of the things it buys, which gives me more happiness. The things are loved for the sake of the people for whom they are bought, which gives me more happiness. The people. But the people are loved because they are connected to me. Which gives me more happiness? Me. Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very selfish way of thinking. Well, yes, but that's how people think. And there's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is our wrong idea of the self. What Vedanta does is, it changes our idea of the self and it makes it the self of all, which we will see. Then it seems at first glance most selfish, it will become most selfless. Because the self that you love is the self of all, actually. So that's the first argument. The first argument is, what gives maximum happiness? The self gives maximum happiness. Because things are loved because they give us happiness. Everything is loved for the sake of the self. Then the self is loved most of all. And that which is loved more is because it gives more happiness. In that sense, we don't think that way. It sounds very odd. But the fact is that all our joy, all our pleasure is derived from the self. The example, Sri Ramakrishna also gave this example. It's an old Vedantic example, that the bone and the dog which was chewing the bone. A dog had an old bone. It would chew the bone. It was an old dry piece of bone, but it would cut its lip inside and it would bleed and would taste the blood and say, what a tasty bone it is. And then it would carefully bury the bone, and the next time it wanted to enjoy that pleasure, it would dig out the bone and chew it and again taste its own blood and say, what a tasty bone it is. I have the best bone in the world. It gives me so much happiness. But it's your own happiness. It's your own happiness. It's not coming from that. That's just what is called a nimitta, an instrument of evoking or manifesting your own happiness. In the Himalayas, I remember this little hut I used to stay in. It was very cold. The difference is there's no air conditioning there. No, there was no power there anyway, so no question of air conditioning. So if it's 40 or 50 outside, it'll be 40 or 50 inside. And your bed also will be 40 or 50 degrees where you're sleeping. So now I used to think, I have this nice warm blanket, I'll get into it. But that's foolishness, because the blanket is not warm, the blanket is also 40 degrees. It's my body which is warm. And the blanket borrows the heat of my body and holds on to it and gives it back to me. And think, oh, what a nice and cozy blanket. No, it's my own body heat. So, world cannot give us pleasure. Nothing in the world is actually a source of pleasure. It borrows your own joy and it reflects it back to you, and you think those things are very nice. They are giving me so much happiness, so they are lovable. Then the second argument is that what gives me continuous happiness, unbroken happiness? The argument here is, if there is something that gives me happiness, I would like to acquire it and keep it. So a gadget, which I like very much, it will give me happiness. I want to go and buy it. What, Black Friday? And then buy the gadget. It will give me happiness. I'll keep it. And as long as it gives me happiness, I'll keep it. When it does not give me happiness anymore, when the new iPhone is out or something like that, then my old one does not give me happiness anymore. If it doesn't give me happiness, what do I do with it? I try to get rid of it. Exchange deal. I give it up. The one same iPhone which gave me so much happiness one time, I stood in a queue, in a line to buy it. Now it doesn't give me happiness. I want to exchange it for a new one. As long as something gives me happiness, I try to keep it or acquire it and keep it. And when something does not give me happiness, gives me in fact positive displeasure, I try to get rid of it. It could be a foul smell, it could be uncomfortable temperature, too hot or too cold. I try to change it. I try to get rid of it. It could be an annoying person. I try to get away from that person. So whatever gives me displeasure, I try to get rid of it, remove it. So what is the principle? If you're trying to get something and keep it, it is giving you happiness. If you're trying to get rid of it, it is giving you unhappiness. Now he says, Bhuyasam, let me be. Let it never be that I am not. We always desire to live. We never desire to die. Which means I am always constant source of my own happiness. What is the logic here? I want to keep myself. I don't want to get rid of myself. Get rid of myself means to die, not exist. So I want to exist. I know what's in your mind. Suicide. What about people who try to kill themselves? Suicide. So they don't want to exist. No, it is always some problem which makes life unbearable. That's why they want to kill themselves. If you remove the problem, they don't want to kill themselves. And this huge debt, I can't pay it off, I can't live. And there's stories of the Wall Street crash of 1929. The people who jumped off from the building, they've lost all their fortune and they are in deep debt maybe. And they straight away walked out of they were on a skyscraper and they jumped to death. I have this huge debt, I am ruined, I can't live anymore. Now you say that, oh, the government is paying off your debt. Don't worry. Student loan is paid off. So you need not worry. Oh, good. What about your suicide? Are you going to go ahead? No. Why? Are you crazy? Why should I kill myself? See, it is an external pressure which ruins life for me temporarily. But when that pressure is removed, I am continuously the source of my own joy. I want to keep myself. What you want to keep is giving you joy. If I am keeping myself, if I want to live, then I am giving myself joy. So again, it's a strange way of thinking. So summing up these two arguments, that we're trying to prove that I am the source of greatest happiness. Nothing gives more happiness to me in this universe except as much as I do. That's number one. Second thing I want to prove is I am my own source, continuous, unbroken source of happiness. And the arguments to prove that was because things which are loved for the sake of another are loved less than that other, and everything is loved for the sake of the self, therefore everything is loved less than the self. And we love that which gives us happiness. We love that more which gives us more happiness. So we love the self the most, that means it gives us most happiness. What Vedanta says, it's not that exactly the self is giving you large doses of happiness, it's rather you, the self. Your happiness is borrowed by things in the world which pretend to give you happiness. Like the dog's bone or the blanket, which I would think it's a cozy, warm blanket. The second thing is, things which give me happiness, I want to keep. Things which do not give me happiness, I want to get rid of. Now, if something is not giving me happiness, I would want to get rid of it. Something is giving me happiness, I want to keep it. If there's something that I want to keep continuously and never get rid of, that means it's continuously giving me happiness. And that is my own existence. And you can explain why people want to kill themselves, suicide. That's because of an external factor, not because their own existence is a problem. Put these two together. I am my continuous source of happiness and I am my ultimate source of happiness. These two together is called Ananda. Ananda. So, the self is Ananda. Not in the sense of Ananda of you eat a cookie or enjoy a beautiful sunset. What is happening there is that the cookie or the sunset, it evokes the happiness from within. The Vedantic idea of happiness, yes.
This seems like such a tepid source of happiness. When I look at Ramakrishna beside himself with bliss, that's the kind of happiness I want.
True. Now, yes. So it seems rather bloodless and an anemic kind of happiness, a very intellectual kind. These arguments did not make anybody happy. I don't see any smiles anywhere. Look at Sri Ramakrishna's happiness, somebody doing kirtan, a joy in bhakti. That seems to be happiness. Yes. So, here we enter into, just a little bit I'll mention and then go ahead. Three kinds of ananda. Vishayananda, Bhajanananda, Brahmananda. Three kinds of happiness. So the source for all of this is the Taittiriya Upanishad. In Taittiriya Upanishad, second chapter, the second chapter is called Brahmananda Valli, the chapter on the bliss of Brahman. They say you have to understand There are three kinds of happiness. Vishayananda, Bhajanananda, Brahmananda. Vishayananda is the joy derived from contact with the world. Pleasurable things, pleasurable people, pleasurable experiences in the world. Bhajanananda is the joy derived from spiritual life, from prayer, devotion, a pure life, deep meditation, complete selfless service. A very pure and great and unshakable kind of joy comes upon the person. This is the joy you find in the saints. See, the contrast the two, the Vishayananda and the Bhajanananda. The Vishayananda depends on so many things going right in the world outside. And then for some time we have some happiness. Whereas the Bhajanananda does not depend on the world outside. It depends on our own spiritual practices. The more progress we make, the more is the happiness. Higher degree of happiness and a more stable happiness and a purer happiness. It doesn't depend on the world for happiness. It doesn't depend on that bone for happiness. But what Vedanta is trying to say is, there is something greater than this, greater not in degree, infinitely greater, of which there are two manifestations. One is the worldly way of getting happiness, one is the spiritual way of getting happiness. And that is called Brahmananda. What is Brahmananda? Brahmananda is not another kind of happiness. It's not some variety of worldly happiness. It's not some variety of spiritual happiness also. It is who you are, that self, Atman. That is Brahmananda. That is Brahman, which is Ananda itself. Now that is reflected in the mind, and that gives happiness. Now there are two ways you can reflect this in the mind. One is, let me show you. One is, there is something in the world for which I have cultivated a desire. So there is ice cream. And you can see, big smile comes. I like it. So ice cream is there, I like it. Now this desire comes up in the mind. What is this desire about? It's about ice cream. I want it. Now the same bliss which is here, which is reflected here in the mind, it's always reflected here. It's reflected here as I am, existence. It's reflected here as consciousness, I am aware, reflected consciousness. And also bliss, full of happiness and joy. But this is obscured by the desire, by multiple desires in the mind. Now this guy goes out and he purchases this and eats it. So there are different degrees. The Upanishad speaks about it, Taittiriya Upanishad. When you come, there's a desire and you come in contact, when you think, I'm going to eat that ice cream, that itself gives you some happiness, the expectation. And then when you get that, what you wanted, when you get that, that gives you more happiness. And then when you consume it, that gives you even more happiness. Priya, moda, pramoda, those are the terms used. And then temporarily, this one is satisfied. This desire goes away. And what is manifested here? Same, your Atman. This joy is manifested here as happiness. And then what happens? Another desire comes for something else. And then obscures it. Again this guy goes out and catches hold of that thing, and again this particular desire is satiated. And the happiness within manifests itself. I am, and I'm aware, and I'm happy. So this is one way of securing happiness. And that's right. And Upanishad says that you need to place this. Oh, yeah, go ahead. A little more? I'll talk a little more about this. Okay. You wanted to ask a question? Yeah, ask a question.
So you said for the second part, the self gives us always happiness continuously. Yes. So you said we always want to be, and that is why the self always gives continuous happiness. But in deep sleep we get maximum happiness, and that time we are not in the identification with body and mind. So that is the maximum happiness which you get, in which we forget ourselves. So,
yes. So we would always like to be in deep sleep, but that's not how we think about it. That's a Vedantic way of looking at it. Normally, this guy doesn't think about, I'll be most happy in deep sleep. No. Deep sleep is nice, and I need it for rest, but there are nice things in this world. I must go out and grab as much of them as possible and enjoy life. When I get tired of it, deep sleep. That's how normally people think of deep sleep. Deep sleep is ananda. That is a very Vedantic way of thinking. Okay. So this is called Vishaya Ananda. What is Vishaya? Object. Ice cream cone. What is the Vishaya Ananda? The ordinary person thinks it's very pleasurable, and that's why it gives bliss. But actually, does the ice cream cone give bliss? Not really. Some people may not like ice cream. I had a friend who did not like chocolate. And that was very weird. The reason was, when he was a baby, his elder sister, out of love, had stuffed chocolate into his mouth, and he nearly choked to death. So he had a lifelong trauma of chocolate. The sister, out of love, had done it. So he was my best friend, but I got all the chocolate because he wouldn't have any chocolate. It made him sick. If this was the cause of pleasure, it would give pleasure to everybody, but it doesn't. Not only that, it's an acquired taste. At some time it may not give you pleasure, at some times it gives you pleasure. So it by itself is not the source of joy. It does not contain some ingredient called joy. No matter what the advertisers tell you. Mixed with love and mixed with the ingredients of love and joy. No, it's not there. Yes. Okay, let me just finish this analysis, then we'll go into the questions. Hold on to your questions. So this is called, so the objects themselves do not have joy in them. Not only that, every economist knows that the law of diminishing marginal utility, that every unit of consumption, the more, I love chocolate ice cream, okay, have it. Good, I enjoyed it. I have one more. Okay, that's nice. I have one more. Then one more. Then you'll throw up. You'll be sick. The same chocolate ice cream is making you sick. So it's not that the object itself is enjoyable in it. It requires you. And then we say, it requires the mind, but then the mind plus the object gives me the joy. Vedanta says actually the joy is in the mind, and more so it is because of the Atman. You, the Atman, you are the source of joy. It's reflected in the mind when the desire for the object is satisfied. When the various desires are in the mind, and we keep satisfying those desires, and joy flashes in the mind, happiness, fulfillment flashes in the mind, and we think like that dog, that thing is giving me happiness. But it's not. It's in the mind, and it comes from the self. Now, this is all of Vishaya Ananda. And then Taittiriya Upanishad will give you the whole range, the way it will put it. What is the maximum joy you can get in the world? It says, the first thing will be very unpopular among many people. The first condition is you have to be young. I remember I said this in an audience in California, and there were all the oldsters in the audience went, boo! But it's a fact, the Upanishad is harsh. To be happy, you have to be young. And then it says you have to be healthy, a strong and vigorous young person. Or you have to be wealthy. It says, Prithivi asya vittasya purna syat. All the wealth in the world. You have to be a combination of Jeff Bezos and who is Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk or something. All the wealth in the world has to be that young person's wealth. Plus, he has to be highly educated. Adhyayakasya, Ivy League education, multiple degrees, Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge, everything. And then sadhusyat, good person. That person must be a noble person, wants to do good in the world. This person's mentality will have maximum joy. which is possible in the world. Every possible thing in the whatever you can desire in the world is ticked. So whenever I would teach that portion of the Upanishad, the audience would be full of smiles thinking about it, how amazing that would be. And then the Upanishad goes on and says, that's not the limit of Vishaya Ananda. There is more joy possible, but not in this world. There are other worlds. There is heaven, multiple layers of heavens, and it shows you that next level of heaven you go to 100 times of this. Shatam Ananda, you go to a Gandharva level. Then you go to next level in heaven, 100 times of that. And it goes to the highest level, the level of Brahma. I calculated what will be the happiness. The maximum happiness you can get in the world, in the heaven, in Brahma Loka, the happiness that you get is 10 to the power 20 of that. 1 followed by 20 zeros of that happiness. It's unthinkable, literally what Americans call mind-blowing. All of that, according to the Upanishad, is nothing but the reflection of your own Atman in the mind. Just what is changing? The object is getting better and better and better. The body is getting better and better. See, these bodies are also limited. How much can you enjoy? These bodies are very weak. They'll collapse, they'll short circuit, they'll blow out. Every ER doctor knows. What you call OD, drug overdose. So many people, bodies break down because they're taking more and more drugs, but will more and more drugs give more and more enjoyment? No. Very soon it becomes terrible suffering. But the body breaks down, it can't. You need better body, Superman body, Spider-Man body. Or in this you say Devata, Gandharva bodies, higher bodies are there. Not only that, the loka, the environment in which you enjoy. The object has to be better, the body-mind has to be superior, and the environment in which you enjoy has to be superior. Then your enjoyment keeps on increasing. But still, it's an enjoyment from within. And it's what you said, this great enjoyment. They're having fun. Now there is another track. Somebody thinks, just a minute, if it is my own enjoyment, which is reflected in the mind, and all that the world does, it removes my desires. It's my desires which are clouding this enjoyment. Then if I remove the desires without chasing the things in the world, without going to all that trouble, if I give up the desires, will I get happiness or not? If this model of happiness is true, then tyaga, renunciation of desires, should make you happy. If only objects in the world, this one can bring you happiness, and then if you give up these things, you should be unhappy. But if you give up these things and the desire for these things, then if you are happy, then it shows happiness is within, not from outside. If happiness was from outside, you would have to cultivate desires and satisfy. Cultivate desires and satisfy. The great psychoanalyst, Erich Fromm, he said, our whole society is predicated upon, our consumer society is predicated upon building up tension and releasing it. That's the only happiness that we know nowadays. The building up tension is what? Advertisement telling you, creating the desire. Then you go out and satisfy it, and that gives you some happiness. That is the idea that this is the only way you can get happiness. But if his happiness is from within, if I give up the desire and the pursuit of these things, automatically happiness should manifest effortlessly. And that is the spiritual life. The spiritual life is, instead of pursuing this, I pursue this. It need not be in the Vedantic way. I can project it outside as God and establish a loving relationship with God. Not try to pursue these things in the world. Does that make anybody happy? And turns out it does. All of human society, religion, throughout the world, in all human history, it's a record of people who have pursued the spiritual life and found fulfillment. Not in wealth outside, not in food and drink, not in friendships and relationships, not even in learning and arts and all of that. All those things are good. But if you get hold of this, it gives you fulfillment. Then what does that depend upon? It depends upon the amount of purity and giving up of desires, and to the extent to which you can hold on to, let's call it God. To that extent, even, see, the worldly happiness, Vishayananda, it has gradations, more and less. Higher and higher and higher. It comes and goes. It comes and goes. Similarly, the Bhajanananda also has gradations, more and less. It also comes and goes. It's also superior and inferior. What does that depend on? Not on objects. It's on how much of the desire you have been able to give up and how much you are able to focus on this reality. Because this reality, your own in reality, is the source of happiness, which is basically spiritual life. So in Bhajanananda also, there are people who have ecstasies from the joy and peace of people starting out in spiritual life to up to that. There are descriptions of Sri Ramakrishna in ecstasy. He's like as if he's about to burst, like a ripe fruit, like a ripe melon. And the whole face has become red and beaming with joy. Extraordinary, deep happiness. But that also up and down. But of course of a much higher order, much superior order. But he says then beyond this is Bhajanananda. 10 to the power 20 is the maximum possible happiness. You can get it by going to Brahma Loka, trying to get these things, or you can get it by renunciation and spiritual practice. Spend your time in prayer, service, meditation, and Vedanta retreats. But he says, that's 10 to the power 20. Then the Upanishad says, and infinite is the Brahmananda. Because, but what is the difference between this Brahmananda and the others? Why does it seem or feel so anemic? Because it's in itself, it is not an experienced Ananda. Everything else is a reflected Ananda. Real Ananda and reflected Ananda. What is reflected Ananda? If you try to get it in the worldly way, it will be Vishayananda. And it will be troublesome. It will be mixed. It will flicker. It will come and go. It will depend on many, many things in the world. Otherwise, what's happening is you have a whole host of desires and trying to satisfy them. One side, half a dozen are not satisfied, you'll still be unhappy. But if you give up the desires and cultivate the mind, a spiritual mind, that also depends upon the cultivation of the mind, spiritual mind. The sadhana that we do, that's also reflected Ananda. Much higher, much better, much superior, much more stable, much less dependent on the world, but still dependent on the mind, dependent on sadhana, dependent on the purity and renunciation. That is Bhajanananda. But in itself, Brahmananda, it's not something there. Then one might say, what good is it then? Well, first of all, it is what is experienced in the world and also in a much elevated, superior sense in spiritual life. Without it, none of this would be there. Not only that, I'll tell you what good it is. It's like reflecting your face in the mirror. This is the mirror, this is your real face. The joy we try to get from the world in the mind, that's always there in the mind. We're trying to reflect ourselves, our joy in the mind. Now, is it always necessary to reflect yourself in the mirror? I want to check myself. Do I exist? Let me see in the mirror. And am I struck with anxiety the moment the mirror is taken away? Maybe my face is gone. I'm faceless. No. I don't need to experience my face in a reflection in the mirror all the time. Sometimes I might. That's fine. If I don't, that's also fine. If I have a poor mirror, it will be a poor reflection. If I have a high-quality mirror, it will be a high-quality reflection. Sometimes the joy will be less. Sometimes the joy will be more. The enlightened one knows aham brahmāsmi. I am the original face. Has no particular desire that I got so much pleasure out of kirtan and ananda, or I got so much pleasure out of sitting in samadhi and the bliss of samadhi. I must always be in that. For the enlightened one, being in that bliss, it's possible and it's wonderful, and once in a while he or she will experience it. Once in a while we'll go around the Holy Mother cooking, cleaning, talking to people. Does she feel that I'm being deprived? Where did that bliss go? No. Yeah, okay. Now, although we have not started the talk yet, but all right, you can ask. And there's somebody else who wanted to ask also. We'll take 2 or 3 quick questions and then You still remember your question?
So you mentioned that when a desire comes, the removal of the desire, the absence of the desire reflects, the reflected consciousness shines, and that's where
the innate joy manifests.
So that's for an ordinary person, and
For everybody.
For everybody who is kind of in the body-mind kind of awareness is stuck in the body-mind awareness. But what about Jivan Muktas? You say that is also in the mind only, they get the Brahmāsmi.
The Jivan Mukta is what I explained at the end.
Yeah.
When the realization comes, aham brahmāsmi, there is no particular, they already have long ago transcended the desire for satisfying things in the world, using objects in the world for joy. And that the spiritual practices are my source of joy, that also they don't depend on it anymore. Though in their life you will see, it will be mostly a life of meditation, prayer, service, and they are getting the joy, that they'll keep on experiencing. But they are not dependent on that for joy. They know something deeper, that I am the original face. Although that's not, there's a qualitative difference between the two. One is Ananda, reflected Ananda. The other one is the original Ananda.
Okay. So in their case is the original.
And can they have reflected Ananda? Of course. And they have it more than anybody else. They have it more than anybody else.
But when we say Sat Chid Ananda, what is that? That seems like the absence of everything else, isn't it?
No, when you say Satchidananda, we mean that one. And that's the reality itself.
But
see, it's like this.
But how to think of it?
Now it should not be so difficult. See, this diagram can be used to explain it. The reality is Sat Chit Ananda, literally translates into existence, consciousness, bliss. How do you think of it? In the world, where is this Satchidananda? In the very existence. Mountain exists, sun exists, tree exists, lake exists, body exists, man, woman, fish. Existence, existence, existence. These are reflected existence. Sat is reflected in these names and forms. And these are what you see around. These are names and forms, they all exist. What is that existence? It's a reflection of Sat. You can call it reflection, you can call it borrowed. Manifest. It is manifest. Sat is manifest. Pure Sat cannot be manifested. What is pure existence? Cannot be manifested. It requires a name and a form. I remember once, it's very interesting debate between dualist and non-dualist. I was having this debate with a very devoted sadhu, from belonging to one of the well-known Vaishnava orders. I think this is fading a little. No, it's okay. So he said, I told him, listen, ultimately it must be formless. If God has only one form, say Krishna, then it cannot be. Krishna has a particular form, right? Then the Krishna cannot be the Shiva form, the Jesus form, or the Devi form. The forms are different. If God is limited to a form, this form alone is God, or God's form is this. But if God is formless, then God can be any one of them. So water, I give the example of water. Water is formless, but whichever container you put it into, it takes that form. It's in a glass, it's like a cylinder. You put it in a lake, it's of that shape. Put it in a droplet of rain from the sky, it's in that shape. You're with me so far? Now listen to his reply. Very beautiful reply he gave. He said, true, but whenever we experience water, it has some form or the other. Have you just experienced water without any form at all? No. So when we experience Brahman, the ultimate reality, it has to have some form. Right? When we actually want to experience, I am experiencing God, you require a name and form. It could even be a formless form. It doesn't have to be a physical form. It could be, akasha. It could be light. It could be sound, anada. But some kind of characteristic must be there, otherwise we can't experience it. So to experience Sat, you experience it in existing things. To experience Chit, where do you experience Chit? In these minds, as conscious experiences. Thinking, remembering, desiring, willing, seeing, hearing. Kena Upanishad says, Keneshitam patati preshitam mana, Kena prana pratama prayeti yukta, Keneshitam vacham imam vadan, Chakshu shrotram kaudeva yunakti. Kena Upanishad starts with that. By what is this thinking of our minds? How does it happen? What lights it up? What is the light which is behind our seeing, our hearing, our talking? What does it mean? He's not asking about the physical process of seeing, optical nerves and all. Because he's saying one thing is behind all of this. All our conscious experiences, which happens through the mind and the senses, that is chit. Chit is reflected there. And what about Ananda? Ananda is reflected in our fulfillment, in our joy, in our life. We are all searching for that. The search for fulfillment, satisfaction, happiness. And whenever we experience it, that's a reflection of Ananda. Now that experience can be in a worldly sense, it can be in a spiritual way also. That's how you think of Satchidananda here.
So does it mean that when there is when we don't want, we kind of reach the ultimate fulfillment, that's the Ananda that is spoken about in Satchidananda?
Ask the question. What is the question?
So when we say Satchid Ananda, that fulfillment is not the 10 to the power 20, it's something beyond which there is no search for any fulfillment. Is that what it means?
Yes. So that when you realize, I am that infinite Ananda, your desperate search for reflecting Ananda in the mind, that disappears. You are fine with anything that happens. But what will happen? You will actually get a lot of bliss. If the way to answer this question is to look at the lives of the saints, those who are enlightened. Are they happy people, practically? Yes. Very, very happy people. Is Ananda at their disposal? If they are Ananda, is the Ananda, can they reflect it in the mind and enjoy bliss? Yes. Anytime they want. So there is no question of their being dissatisfied or unhappy at any point. This world itself is Satchidananda. But we would recognize it. What we recognize is tree, mountain, sun, lake, man, woman, fish. How will you recognize Satchidananda here? Notice, tree is, mountain is, sun is, lake is, man is, woman is, fish is. Can you feel the ocean of existence we are around? We are always immersed in a limitless ocean of existence. You are not one little body there. You are this ocean of existence itself. That's what Vedanta is trying to tell you. Again, Chit, in all our experiences, isn't one thing common, that consciousness is shining through all our experiences? Whether you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, whether you love, hate, enjoy, suffer, isn't consciousness shining? Without that, any of these experiences possible? No. All right. Yes, 2 questions quickly. You ask and then Ishwar, pass it down.
So along the same lines, Swamiji,
Yes.
with regard to, so with I exist, so consciousness is Sat, I understand that. But with regard to Ananda, you always say, like consciousness is not happy, it's happiness itself, or it's bliss itself. It's not loving, it's love itself, right? You've said that before. Those are all kind of, love is an emotion that emerges from the brain, or a feeling that emerges from the brain. So, and the consciousness is something that is unaffected by anything of those, and it's a witness to all of this. So how do you then say that bliss is part of such Chit, and that it's not emerging from the brain itself?
Again, let me put it this way. When you say existence, normally we don't think of pure existence. We think of existing things. Table exists, chair exists, man exists, woman exists. Advaita wants us to think of existence itself. Not as abstract, as something that we feel all the time. But we need existing things to feel existence. Otherwise, existence is there, but you won't feel it. Similarly, consciousness. When we say consciousness itself, we don't feel consciousness itself. We feel conscious experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, perceptions. But underlying all of that is that one consciousness. Now, why is it that we don't feel pure consciousness itself or pure existence itself? The reason is, pure existence or pure consciousness is the subject, it's you, it's not an object. Notice again, you're saying Ananda is a feeling, but existence is also existing thing. That's what you're saying. Can Ananda be something other than the feeling of Ananda? What is common to all feelings of Ananda? You will find it's not a particular feeling anymore. It's one common thing to all feelings of Ananda is you, your own existence. It's not an attribute. The moment you say existing thing, it becomes an object in the world. The moment you say a feeling of Ananda, it becomes a feeling in the mind, which is reflected in the mind, which arises and disappears, which is impermanent. But underlying that impermanent feeling of Ananda, it could be Vishaya Ananda, it could be Bhajana Ananda. But underlying that feeling of impermanent bliss is one permanent bliss. Which is, the thing with the Ananda itself is that it's not a particular type of feeling, particular type of bliss. All particular types of bliss are it. You might say, if it's not a particular type of bliss, what use is it? It's like saying, if water is not a particular wave, what use is water? What do you mean, what use is water? Water is all waves. Without water, no waves would be there. Without that Ananda, no reflected Ananda would be there. You say, I can't see my own face. This is useless. Only the face in the mirror is useful. No, the face in the mirror is just a reflection of your real face. The advantage that the face in the mirror has is you can see it. But it depends on the mirror. The advantage of recognizing that it is your own face which is reflected in the mirror, then you don't become dependent on the reflection anymore. I exist regardless of whether my face is reflected or not. Whether it's reflected in a concave mirror, whether it's reflected in a convex mirror, whether it's reflected in a dirty mirror, in a pool of water, on a titanium polished mirror. What is the face reflected in the titanium polished mirror? It's the joy and being, young, healthy, endlessly rich, endlessly knowledgeable, all of that. That's the mirror. What it reflects is you. And the Brahmagyani knows this. So he's not running after mirrors. Whatever mirrors his past karma provides him, he said, oh good, Brahman, you're still there, you're hanging around, good, no problem. Ishwari.
Yeah, so I'm not, in your diagram, when you explain is that if you renounce desires,
Yes.
And or there is forced deprivation of anything that you experience, there is a good chance that you will be able to access some of your own, this other side, right, yourself. But the way to access that is also you have to cultivate the spiritual side.
Yes.
Now, cultivation of the spiritual side is also,
Yes.
isn't it?
Cultivation of spiritual side is also a desire, correct?
So my question is, I am invoking or evoking another desire, then won't that obscure?
It's a beautiful question. And the answer is no. Why not? This is a desire that removes all other desires. Sri Ramakrishna answers this. The desire for God is not to be counted among desires, because it removes all the desires. The only thing that obscures our inner bliss, that endless bliss, is this grasping after ways to enjoy it in the world. When the desire for God, what is the desire for God? It's none other than the desire for my own self, Ananda. You see, what is God after all? It is that Ananda, Satchidananda projected out that there is a God and I believe in God. Now I'm praying to God, I'm worshipping God. It's that same Ananda. I want that Ananda. That's all that the desire for God is. And it will remove all the worldly seeking Ananda in this world or in heavens. And that sets you free. And no, but in one sense you are right. If that's so great, will that desire remain forever? No. That desire for God also will disappear when you have realized God. That's why, you remember Shankaracharya sings, Na dharmo, na chartho, na kamo, na moksha. Moksha is the goal, spiritual freedom. We are all here for moksha. Shankaracharya, whose book we are reading, he says, I don't want moksha. Why not? Because he has realized it. You might say, oh, he has got moksha, that's why he doesn't want it anymore. But a deeper answer is, he knows that I and everybody else is ever free. I've realized it. Therefore, there's no need. It's silly to search for moksha. I am free. Why should I search for moksha? God is ever my own. Why should I search for God anymore? That state he has reached. That is Jivan Mukta. At that point, the spiritual desire, I will cultivate this kind of practice, I will do this or that is also gone. Totapuri, Sri Ramakrishna told Totapuri, if the pot is made of brass, you need to polish it. But suppose it's made of gold, then you don't need to polish it. Yes.
On Friday evening, you talked about various Vakyas. One of them is consciousness is Brahman.
Yes.
How about Ananda is Brahman?
Yes. Ananda is Brahman. Ananda Brahmeti Vejanat. Know Ananda to be Brahman. That's in the Upanishad. Taittiriya Upanishad says Ananda is Brahman. The one reason why they don't use it as a Mahāvākya is that the way we understand Ananda, bliss, is it's flickering, it comes and goes. Consciousness is constant. That's a good doorway to understanding what Brahman is. Ananda is something we are aiming at. And it's our real nature actually. And also notice an interesting thing, just in a common sense way. Existence is basic. But there can be existence without consciousness or joy. It doesn't make much sense to say the rock is conscious or the rock is having a great time, it's having a party, it's having a lot of fun. No, the rock just exists. Now we can exist, plus we can be conscious also. So I exist and I'm aware. So awareness includes existence. You can't be aware without existing. Existence, normally, in a common sense way, existence need not include awareness. Awareness includes existence. Without existence, nothing or nobody can be aware. And then, but it need not be Ananda, it need not be a happy existence. A person who is in life support in Mount Sinai is existing, is conscious and conscious of suffering. Need not be very happy. But happiness, Ananda, happiness, joy, whatever you call it, it requires existence and consciousness, and then happy. So Ananda, even in a non-philosophical, non-Advaitic sense, it includes existence consciousness. Sat Chit is already included in Ananda. So why not just call it Ananda? Why don't you just call Brahman Ananda? Yes. Upanishad says, Anandam Brahmeti Vejanat. But then that Ananda is not a particular feeling. It's always there. It is the absolute reality.
Now, this second point is not exactly a philosophical question, but you talked about how suicide is always about some external problem. As you approach the Tappan Zee Bridge, there's a big sign, life is worth living. And you know why that's there, because people walk onto the bridge and
jump off, yes.
Right, so can you suggest a better sign?
a better sign?
Yeah.
I don't know. Your life itself.
Find yourself.
Find yourself. Your life itself. Suicide doesn't work. It's 100% guaranteed failure. We want to extinguish ourselves. We won't. Sri Ramakrishna says that. It just prolongs suffering. We'll get it all back again in another form. It's better to continue with this existence as far as possible. But always remember, we actually don't depend on this body and mind to exist. The body and mind depend on us for existence. Okay. Okay, then we want to proceed further in this session. We'll just take the questions and then make a fresh beginning in the next session. Raka and then her.
Sorry, just one. You were saying that existence, Ananda, dependent on consciousness, dependent on existence, but only in the relative.
Yes.
In fact, otherwise, in the absolute, they're interchangeable.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Interchangeable.
Yeah.
In the absolute, existence, awareness, bliss are the same thing.
Same thing.
Are the same thing. Then a question here.
Swamiji, would you agree that once somebody is in that state of realization, howsoever small in time, I mean, even just a flicker of it, then wouldn't at that point all the questions, all the desires and everything will just be totally absent?
Yes. If you get an insight, this insight, the moment of enlightenment, then all desires are fulfilled. It's not that you have to give up all desires, because they're fulfilled. There's nothing more to fulfill. All questions are answered. What you have said is, it's the very words of the Upanishads. Taittiriya Upanishad. Brahma vidapnoti param tadeshabhyukta. The knower of Brahman attains the highest. What is Brahman? How do you know Brahman? And what do you mean by attaining the highest? It is said, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is infinite existence awareness. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Infinite existence awareness. By the way, Ananda is not mentioned here. Ananta is mentioned here. Limitlessness. In Advaita Vedanta, this very limitlessness is Ananda. It is a limit which is the source of unhappiness or dissatisfaction. I want to be vast without limit. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Your existence awareness without limit, that itself is Ananda. In another Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, it is said, Yo vai bhuma tat sukham nalpe sukham asti. That which is the vast is joy. There is no joy in the limited. The limited we always seek to overflow it, because our very nature is the unlimited. So Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Infinite existence awareness is Brahman. How do we know this Brahman? Yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. Who realizes Brahman in the sacred space of the cave of the heart. Those who are initiated immediately it will click. Oh, I'm supposed to visualize the deity, the chosen deity in the space in the heart and repeat the mantra there, the luminous form. That's where it comes from. You realize Brahman in the sacred space of the cave of the heart. What does that mean? Sounds very poetic. Shankaracharya, he deflates that balloon. He just says you realize it in the intellect, in your understanding. The cave of the heart is your understanding, basically. So, in your understanding, how do you realize it in your understanding? What does it mean? Not that there is Brahman, not that there is some kind of infinite reality. I am Brahman. Aham brahmāsmi. Then only it will work for you. If you realize there is some infinite God, all power, we'll see in the next class, all powerful, all knowing. Good for God, what about me? Well, you can only love God. That seems like a raw deal. At most you can be the servant of God. You can never be the boss. But Advaita says you have to realize it as, I am that infinite. Once you realize that, what will happen? You will get the result. What is the result? Yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman soashnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipaschiteti. By realizing Brahman, I am Brahman, one attains, the enlightened one attains to the fulfillment of all desires simultaneously. All desires, whatever one could want, all desires fulfilled simultaneously. Does that mean I get to order everything on the menu? Does that mean all my Christmas shopping lists are instantly fulfilled? Amazon is working overtime to supply whatever I need. No, not in that sense. You attain the infinite which you are searching for which you are trying to do all this. To gain possessions, relationships, knowledge, money, gadgets, decorate the house, decorate the body, all of that which I was trying to do, for what reason? That you have gained already. Now you don't need any of it anymore. Don't be in a hurry. Because once you do that, the game of life is over for you. God will go, this one is done. There's no fun anymore. Give it freedom. use the raw materials to create new ones. Set this one free. This one is boring now. Is not going to suffer anymore. Is not going to go through all sorts of experiences, provide a drama of life. No drama in this life anymore. You're free of it all. So, yes, by realization, I am Brahman, all desires are fulfilled. In the sense that I really don't want anything anymore. Even just long before that, it's a sign of maturity. That whatever this world seems to offer, I have seen. Some people just by reading, by looking, they understand. They're advanced. Others they take a little bit of experience in the world. They say in Hindi, chakh ke dekhna. Just taste it a little bit. You don't have to eat everything in the buffet. Taste a little bit, you see what it is. And then you realize, more of this will not make a difference to me. In Hindi they say 1920, 1920. Not 1920, the date. 1920 is just little more than 19, but it's basically the same thing. That's maturity. And when one becomes enlightened, that reaches its peak. That nothing here is of any value to me. However, does that mean I'm bored? Some people say, I think you'll be bored. There's no point to life. No. When you look at the lives of enlightened people, they are not at all bored. One thing they are not is bored. They are deeply fulfilled. They are always full of childlike enthusiasm, joy, bliss. It's we who are sometimes happy, mostly miserable, often bored. They don't need it. They don't need the world to entertain themselves. Yes. Is there any other question anywhere? So this one. Yes.
At the beginning of the lecture today, you said we do not feel others or the world. Like
we do not?
We feel ourselves, but we do not feel we are the other people, or we do not feel objects of the world.
Yes. We do not think that we are other people, or we are. Nobody ever thinks, I am you.
But we do feel attachment to other people and worldly objects.
Yes.
So is this attachment a reflection of the identification of our mind and to our mind and body?
It is because they are related to this self. That's why we feel. So that we feel attached to some, we don't feel attached to others, and with others we feel inimical. Why? These people, they say in Sanskrit, anukula, they are good for me. They are nice to me. So I like them. Those people are indifferent to me, I am indifferent to them. I have nothing to gain from them, or I am not interested. And those other people are out to hurt me. Hurt me means this body. Therefore, liking, indifference, dislike. All related to this body-mind. But if you shift the identification of body-mind, I, what does I refer to? I refers to this body-mind usually. And in what did we do yesterday? That we shifted the reference of the I to this. Tvam, what does tvam mean? We say this thing. But now when you inquire, it is this. So I'm not this particular body-mind. And this one actually shines through all bodies and minds. We will see in the next class why this tat is introduced, God is introduced, this analysis will be introduced. Right now what we have reached is a Sankhyan position. I am consciousness, everything else is object, matter, nature, Prakriti. Here is the universe, the body, even the mind, and the causal state also, the source of the mind. All of that is Prakriti. I am Purusha, consciousness. Now at this stage also you have gone beyond suffering. Notice all problems are out there. There are no problems here. If you just think in this way, it's a simple exercise. If I'm just awareness, and if I close my eyes, ears, nose, don't close your nose. So, if I am not taking in any sensory inputs, I don't see anything, hear anything, taste anything, I don't remember anything, I am not thinking any particular thought, and I'm absolutely still, and I am the awareness to which this stillness appears. Now, let me ask you, that awareness to which that stillness appears, that awareness, what does it need? Nothing. Is it born and die like the body? Does it? No. What is it afraid of? Without the mind, the awareness, what is it afraid of? Nothing. Without the mind, the awareness itself, what is it anxious about? Nothing. Not even. Can that awareness be bored? No. No. You require the mind to be bored. Can it be happy? No. Does it need to be happy? Why am I sad? How can I be happy? Does it think like that? No. It just is. But it also shines. It's a new word I've seen. I like it. Presence. Presence means isness awareness. That isness awareness which we are in itself needs nothing. Nor is it afraid of anything. Nor is it born, nor does it die. Can awareness grow old? No. Can it become sick? No. That awareness has no problems at all. And then all of the others, they arise in it. And then when they arise, that awareness through the mind and body can deal with the problems of mind, body and society. But in itself, you are fine. So Sankhya sets you free from sorrow and suffering in the society. However, now we are going, till now no Advaita. Advaita has not started yet. Now it's going to start. A question will arise. So, for example, in all these bodies and minds, is there one consciousness or many consciousnesses? That one question will arise. Also, what about this world? We have not said anything about this world. So what's the problem? If I'm free, fine. I'm just awareness. Like somebody said, shining like a star in the darkness, dark skies, separate from everything else. But I'm luminous awareness. True, but Vedanta says that's not enough. Sankhya says that's enough for freedom. Vedanta says that's not enough. Why is it not enough? Because Vedanta says, Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. From the other comes fear. There is another. Who is the other? That person is another. That fish is another. It's not just fear. It's desire. Fear, desire, anxiety, all reactions will come, and even if there's no other person, other things are there, something other than me. Dvitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. From the other comes fear. You are not home free yet. And then the question remains, what about this vast universe? What is its purpose? What is it to me once I am free of it? Not only that, at one time it caught me. It trapped me in one body mind and I thought I was a body mind. It can do so again. There are many bodies and minds. There's trouble all around. And when you say infinite awareness, it's not really infinite. Why? What is the definition of infinite? In Sanskrit, the word is ananta. No limit, no end. But this consciousness comes to a limit, an end. Where? Here. There is a mind, there is a body, there is the world. This is not consciousness. This is separate, this is separate. Didn't we separate it? So this consciousness has a limit. It runs up against an object which is not consciousness. And that object can be pleasurable, painful. So we Advaitins will say, you have not really achieved much. And a psychiatrist will say, you have alienated yourself from the rest of the universe. What you have done is a surefire recipe for mental problems. You have separated yourself from the universe. You will not find peace that way. You wanted peace. You will not find it that way. Peace is not found in separation. Peace is found in oneness. So peace is not found in limitation. Peace is found in infinity. So Shantam Shivam Advaitam. Mandukya Upanishad says, Shantam, peace. Shivam, auspiciousness. Where? Advaitam, in non-duality. There's plenty of duality here. I am consciousness. These are all separate from me. Millions of minds and bodies and mountains and lakes and trees and birds. They're all separate from me. Not only that, according to Sankhya, there are millions of consciousnesses. They're also separate from me. What do you do about this now? We will see in Advaita, that is the next class. And we'll also see why we had to do all this. Why couldn't we have straight away jumped to oneness and non-duality? Why did we have to do this? Good. Last. Why?
Why did we get into the discussion of happiness, exploring happiness? We are trying to extract the meaning of tvam asi.
Yes. We are a little sidetracked. I'm guilty of that. Because the reason, why did that happen? If you trace it back, where did we go wrong? Yeah. First, I'll come to that. But first, a little point, I'm reminded, the French existentialist, Sartre, what does he say about others? He says, hell is other people. Hell is other people. Hell is other people. Yeah. So, otherness is a source of problem for me. Okay, what are we doing? Didn't we get off track? Yeah. Did you lose your GPS? Where are we? We landed up somewhere lost. We are lost. No. Actually, we are a little sidetracked, but it doesn't matter. What we did was, we are going along fairly nicely, sailing along. Tvam, we wanted to know the meaning of tvam. We extracted the meaning of tvam. The direct meaning, Vakyartha, is consciousness, causal body, subtle body, physical body. That is the meaning of you. The implied meaning, Lakshyartha, which we are interested in, is consciousness only. We have done this. And then we should have gone to find out the meaning of Tat. But in between, what happened was this Satchidananda. We keep speaking about Satchidananda, but the question might be, you spoke about consciousness, not even much about Sat. And you didn't even touch Ananda at all. Most unhappy experience. Why not talk about happiness? So we started talking about happiness, but everybody wants happiness. That's why the whole session became about happiness. Yeah, we have run out of time. It's time for lunch now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Rupanamastu. To lunch.